Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things weddings. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I am Sarah Alapin, host of the Wedding Dish and also CEO of Photos Maharty and District Bliss. And we have our little French bulldog bud taking a nap halfway on, halfway off his little bed on the floor. So you might hear his snores. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Wedding Dish today. Today, we are talking with a planner who focuses on creating intentional and sustainable events. It was something that she saw a need for when couples came to her looking for a celebration that was different and truly unique to them. I would like to welcome the human behind Rad Occasions, Radhika Graham. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am very excited to dish with you. And it's such an important episode. And I'm so glad you're here with me. Are you ready to dive in?
Yes, I am.
All right. So today we are talking about inclusivity and diversity in the wedding industry. And for me, this has been a big ongoing issue. And I'm really glad that we're talking about it today for many, many reasons. I think it's also just such an important topic. And while it is something that in many cases we are aware of, there are some really big gaps here in the wedding industry specifically that I sometimes think you don't really realize until you're either in the industry or you're in the process of getting married. Okay, so what are some of the places that you see where we could that really allow for growth in terms of inclusivity and diversity in the wedding industry?
Oh gosh, that's such a big question.
I
I'm
know.
gonna I'm gonna start like big picture maybe, and then we'll go down from there. I would say like big picture, I see that like it's still common practice to market to brides. You don't really see like gender neutral terms. You don't see like the couple being mentioned. It's like really just like the one half of the two people getting married. And I'm always like kind of like, just being like, hey, just as a reminder, like when I'm like talking to other vendors, that I'm like, can we maybe like look at something else? Can we call these people something else? Can we ask the couple what they want to be called? And and then like to get like more like into like the little itty bitty of it all. Um, there's so many aspects that come to like the day of where some people don't even consider that maybe the groom wants to get pampered, or maybe somebody who is non-binary wants to get pampered, and there's no services that are specific to that. It's very much like the bridesmaids, the groomsmen, and like they all go do their own separate things. And then like it even gets down to, making sure everybody feels welcome, regardless of what walk of life they're from in that couple's world. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. I think not to cut you off, I think one like you just hit some really important points, and this is something that I have specifically been hearing this wedding season, which is like when you get the timeline, the sample timeline from your planner or your venue, it always says bride and groom, and
yeah,
it's just like there's like even if you are a female or someone who identifies as a female, you don't always identify as a bride.
100%. And I mean, the other thing too is I have some vendors who identify as they, them, or I've had people at the wedding party that identify as they, them. And I was like, do I need to put that on the timeline just for them? Or should I just switch it so everybody has their pronouns? So now we do have like in the contact list a column that's just pronouns for everybody. They can share them if they want to. They don't have to. It's a no pressure situation.
Yeah, I agree. And even if the couple is like, even if the relationship or the wedding is a hetero wedding, I've had grooms who have wanted to get their hair done and things, or the groom was the only one who cared about the wedding planning, and the female was like checked completely out of it, like was just like, go right ahead, like whatever color you want, like I'm here for it, but I just don't have any opinions, and it's not that important to me. Yeah, I think that's why I love this conversation and why I thought it was so interesting to be able to bring you
Sure.
on here to talk a little bit about this, because it is just such a gap. And I think we in the industry are often blind to it, but it's really jarring as a person who is getting married when you don't feel seen and heard.
100%. And I feel like that even comes down to like some people who may have challenges. Like, for example, my husband is dyslexic. And
Me too.
yeah. And so I didn't realize that my timelines were really hard for him to read. And he helps on the wedding days on top of his day job. And I was like, oh my gosh, if you're affected by this, then other people are affected by this too. And I've like been in my own little world, not even realizing that this is actually something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because dyslexia is its own like little beast, but I'm also left-handed. So if anything is being written and it's like the check box, like the question is on the left and the checkbox is on the right, my hand is always in front of
Yeah, and left-handed scissors too. Those are really hard to find. I'm not
they.
left-handed, but my mother-in-law and one of our assistants was.
Oh, that's so interesting. I wonder if your husband like has left-handed tendencies because dyslexia is very common in left-handedness.
Not that I know of. He seems to be right-handed.
Huh. How
Huh,
interesting.
that is interesting.
I just love the way brains work. I think they're so
Yeah.
fascinating. On a separate note.
Oh, me too. We could talk, have a whole other episode about like psychology and like how our brains interprets things.
Yeah, I know.
Not that I'm an expert.
No, but like how it's fascinating the way that like
Yeah,
the brain you live in and the brains you are around, you are an expert in your own brain.
exactly.
No one else lives in there. Probably.
Probably.
So, what made you take notice that we needed to make a change in this area in the wedding industry? Like, was there a specific event, or was it just like going through and experiencing, or was it seeing your clients feel like they weren't represented?
I think it started more seeing that our clients, the people that were coming to me, were asking for something different. And they were coming to me because I was the one who was saying, well, let's see how we can make it happen. And like we've done weddings in graveyards, we've had hawks fly in the rings, we've had all sorts of fun, fantastical things happen at weddings. And it's been such a joy to see these people actually see their dreams come true and actually like work with someone who's like, yeah, let's see what we can do. Maybe we can make it happen.
That's so fun. We should do a whole separate episode on the cool things that you have seen happen, like the unique pieces that you can incorporate into a wedding that you never thought possible. Um,
Gosh, let's do it.
yeah, I'm so in for that. I'll have to bring you back. It's so funny. Like I think until you notice that you aren't being represented somewhere, you don't really realize how important it is. And, even if that is having a unique celebration or something that you thought like was never possible, have like when you finally are seen and heard, or when you are absolutely not seen or heard for the first time, it's just like it's a life-changing event, I think.
Yes, 100%. And I'm noticing right now, like to keep things current, like there's the Ambani wedding that's happening in India, or it just happened. I think it might still be happening. But like for the first time in a long time, I'm seeing like people over here take notice of Indian culture and traditions in a different way, because a lot of the times it's all very stereotypical, the way that people look at like the area of the world that I'm from. So I'm like, it's really nice to see another take on it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's really interesting. And now that you've said that, I've been getting a lot of questions about Indian weddings recently.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, and like it's interesting because there's so many dialects even in India too, right? And so, but yeah, it's really cool to see like my name is actually being pronounced properly now because of the bride, so that's pretty cool. And I know we've talked about like how important it is to pronounce people's names correctly, and like yeah, that's a huge part of being seen.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I think it might go back to where I was, because I was a high school teacher. I really hate saying people's names incorrectly. I actually have like a tiny bit of anxiety every time that I start a podcast episode and I have to say anyone's name, just because it's just different. You don't know what's going to come out of your mouth. And, yeah, I think it's so important to really take the time and make people feel like you actually care. So that's really exciting. I didn't think about that either with your name. Amazing. Okay, so tell me, why are you so passionate about inclusivity?
I grew up in a time where I was basically made to feel like I was ashamed of my culture and I felt really left out. And this was like going all the way back to like elementary school. And I tried to work really hard to like hide that part of my identity. And I was thinking about it before I got on to here. And I was like, I think that's like the root of it all. Um, and then in terms of like, I got tired of seeing other people feeling so disheartened when it came to like the wedding industry, either if they were working with a planner or not working with a planner, or just trying to figure it all out on their own. It just I felt so made me so sad, and I was like, I can do something to fix this. And I know, like at the end of the day, like it's not like ending world hunger or anything, but it is making a difference to those people that we're talking to, even if they're not one of our couples, because I have talked about this on our podcast as well. That's on hiatus before anyone gets too excited. But there's definitely two or three episodes that we touch on that and how we can make a difference and like actionable items that we can all do as couples and as wedding planners or any
Yeah.
wedding professional. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes we don't know as wedding professionals either. I mean, this is an area where you and I really prioritized making a difference. But a lot of wedding planners, it's not their fault, or wedding professionals, it's not their fault. They just don't know until someone tells them. But it's also like, as the couple, the last thing you want to do is go around and like educate every single person you're working with and like tell, so like if I see it, I'll call it to the attention of, there are a couple venues in this area, and we are big LGBTQ friendly city in the DC area. And I think every wedding I've done at this one venue, two weddings, I've done two hetero weddings at this one venue, and I've worked there probably 30 times. They have bride and groom on their timeline. So like, I will say something, but it must be so exhausting for people to have to like advocate every time and tell people, no, it's not like they're, it's
Yeah,
just,
100%. Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I've done the same thing where like it's been like the bride's room, and I'm like, can we just call it the wedding party's room or something a little bit more inclusive? And yeah, and it is probably exhausting for the couples to have to do it. So like, I hope that they feel like they have advocates in that. And one really cool thing I think that a lot of couples are doing is being really conscious of who it is they're hiring. So they're making sure to hire diverse vendors, essentially. I guess that's the best word for it. So they're making sure that, yes, they're booking based first on whether that person fits with what they're looking for their day, but they're also going that one step further.
Yeah, I hear that a lot for me, where people will come to me and tell me they hired me for that reason. Like, oh, we love your work and you are inclusive and you care about people, even if they're,
Yeah.
whether or not n- you know, whether or not they're straight, LGBTQ, like it doesn't
Hmm.
matter.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, because we care about that stuff. When you care, you care.
Yes, totally. And I mean that can like even filter down into, getting into like accessibility in a venue, and even down to like making sure that there's mocktails for people if like there's a good amount of people that don't drink, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, that's definitely true too, and that's becoming increasingly popular as well. And I love that. I love having options so that everyone can enjoy, and you know all of those things. Like, it just makes the experience even better. And then you're the wedding that everyone talks about, how every single person was happy at it, and of course, then the photos are beautiful because everyone's smiling.
Exactly.
which also makes a big difference.
It does. And I mean, like, the amount of like smiles, like the huge grins I get when people are like, oh my gosh, you have a vegan meal for me if like the entire wedding isn't vegan. I'm like, that just makes my day right there.
Oh, yeah, or, like, something that, like, you're sure is gluten-free if the person has celiac or some sort of allergy related to gluten. Like, all of the yeah, it's just it really makes people feel loved and
Hmm.
good.
Yeah. And that they weren't like an afterthought.
Yeah, like, they really want you to be there.
Exactly.
I love that. So what are I know you put a lot of these practices into place in your business, but what are some of the pieces that other wedding professionals can implement in their businesses that might help them become more inclusive if they're just really not sure where to start or, how to indicate that they are inclusive?
So I've added onto my website because I realized I talked a lot about my values in my Instagram and all my social media, but I'm like, I need to have it on somewhere that I own, a space that I own, because who knows what's going to happen with these social media sites. So I created like a values and our ethics section on the website. So people are really clear about it right off the bat. And like our value proposition as well is also a commitment to doing unique, intentional events where like we get to like the nitty gritty and the why of it all instead of just being like, oh, it's tradition. We've always done it that way kind of thing. And like obviously there's going to be venues that you have to do things a certain way because they're a historical site or whatever the case might be. But there's always like other ways that you can, add your own personal touch to it. The other thing too is I've made sure that my vendor list is also diverse. So when people are looking at it, they are able to work with BIPOC vendors. They're able to work with LGBTQ vendors. So that's already something that's been thought out for them in advance, and then it's just up to them to pick who suits their budget and their needs. And then, yeah, the documents, we've touched on that before too. I went through and made sure that every single document now says couple. And every once in a while, I've like missed something somewhere, and like one of my LGBTQ couples will come back and be like, hey, just so you know, and like they mean it in the nicest way, and I really appreciate it because sometimes you just do, you miss those things. And I also really worked on education because I feel like that's where it starts. When you were talking about, you know, wedding pros, and some of them just don't know. So I feel like it's part of my job to educate myself. So then maybe I can start to educate other vendors outside of a wedding day and maybe even pass that on to the couples while we're working with them, especially if they're a heterosexual couple and they don't really know where the first place is to start.
Yeah, I think so too. Those are all really good suggestions. And I think to kind of like echo what you are saying or to sum up a little bit about what you're saying that I think is like the thing you didn't actually explicitly say, but you mean here too, is that it's progress, not perfection. We are always working on being a better version of ourselves in everything we do every day. And just because you make a mistake does not mean you are not a good person or that you aren't trying. We're just all doing the best we can, um, and that's why you are a wonderful resource for other wedding professionals and also for your couples too.
Yeah, and also to that too, I find that sometimes I hold back in asking the questions because I'm worried that that person is going to see it as not their job to be the one who's educating because they already do so much of the emotional lifting on a day-to-day basis. And I get that. Sometimes I don't want to be the one that's doing the education either, right? Um, but I think if you approach it in like a respectful way and also give the opportunity to that person to say, sorry, I just can't be that person for you, but maybe, talk to this person or search it on Google, right? There's so many resources available now just right at our fingertips, in our pockets, even.
Yeah. Yeah, and ask your friends too, I think that's another like if you're not sure, you have people you're friends with in the wedding industry, feel free to ask them. And couples, feel free to lean on your wedding vendors who will advocate for you. I think that's I'm sure it's exhausting. So I thought wedding planning was overall exhausting. But and if you if you've gone over it time and time again and you just want someone else to be the one to pass it along, ask somebody, like, we're happy to do it for you. We're happy to speak on your behalf and that kind of thing too. And do it in a gentle way, because people just sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Yes, exactly. That's what it all comes down to, right? Is we don't know what we don't know, and it's all up to us to figure it out either together or by ourselves, whichever way works best.
Exactly. Do you have any final thoughts for couples and also wedding professionals who want to have a more inclusive celebration, other than, a lot of the things that you've already included here?
I think that the process gets easier if you get really clear on your priorities right from the beginning of the planning stages. I always say to everyone, enjoy that time to be engaged because it's, you know, fleeting because then you jump right into planning and then get clear on three priorities for each of you and then come together and figure out what is a priority together and what like maybe you want to spend the money on separately because we definitely have couples who do that. But that really helps make it clear on how you're hiring people and why you're hiring them. Because then when you know that everyone's on the same page when it comes to values, it's going to make everything run so much smoother.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the wedding dish today, Radhika. How can people find you online?
So on my website, which is where I mostly hang out, and then social media, so Instagram, and I'm really getting into threads lately too.
And what is your website and social media handle?
Oh, yeah, that's probably a good thing to give you. It's radications.ca, and my social media handle is radications or at radications.
And we will, of course, link out to you on our Instagram at the Wedding Dish Podcast and on our show notes, which is theweddingdishpodcast.com. You'll find them there and in the episode description. So it'll be super easy for you to find rad occasions. I just have enjoyed having you here so much. It has been such a fun conversation. I'm really glad that we got to know each other, and I'm totally bringing you back about unique celebrations and how the things that couples don't even realize they could make reality, that are just the weddings of their like impossible dreams.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
Thank you everyone for tuning into the wedding dish today. Thank you, Radhika, for joining me today. Give the podcast a follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting app. And until we meet again, cheers, everybody.